The scorching sun dipped low behind jagged black cliffs, casting long shadows across the red dust of Korkesh's surface. Carol's footsteps were swift and purposeful as she navigated the labyrinth of obsidian canyons. The air hummed with tension. Her people, the Thalzun, were preparing for an encounter unlike any before. Carol was no stranger to conflict, but this time it was different. Humans had arrived in their sector, probing the outer edges of the galaxy. Their ships were impressive, their technology advanced. Yet their presence unsettled the Thalzun. The humans spoke of exploration and peace, but history had taught Carol to expect caution. Ahead, a scout radioed in. Human forces were closing in on the valley. Carol's heart pounded. Her mission was clear: hold the line, protect the sacred lands, and, if necessary, drive the invaders away. The first encounter was a burst of movement. Shouts echoed off the canyon walls, voices in two languages mixing in the dust-filled air. Carol moved like a shadow, her blade catching the light as she deflected a human's attempt to flank her. The clash was brief but intense, a dance of quick reflexes and strategy rather than brute force. Suddenly, a sharp sting traced across her hand. She glanced down. Her blade bore a crimson streak, but it wasn't her blood. She had cut the human commander's face. The man, Captain Elias Rourke, staggered back, clutching his cheek. His eyes met Carol's across the space between them, not with hatred, but something that made her pause. Respect. Surprise? A hint of pain. Without another strike, Elias signaled a retreat. Carol blinked, confused by his choice. She had expected anger, a call to battle, or even pursuit. Instead, he vanished into the red haze, leaving her alone with the weight of that unexpected moment. Carol's hand trembled slightly as she wiped the blood from her blade. Thalzun lore whispered of the Zarmik, a rare mystical bond that could be formed when blood was shared through a weapon. It was a legend, a story told to warn warriors of consequences beyond the battlefield. Could it be true? She shook the thought away but found herself unable to stop thinking about Elias's face, the way his eyes lingered on her, not as an enemy, but as someone who had seen more than just a combatant. That night, under the twin moons of Korkesh, Carol sat alone outside her shelter. The wind whispered through the canyon like a soft voice calling her name. Strange images flickered in her mind, flashes of a world she had never seen, faces she didn't recognize. Meanwhile, aboard a sleek human ship orbiting Korkesh, Elias stared at his reflection in a med-unit's polished surface. The scar on his cheek throbbed faintly, but it wasn't just physical. A strange warmth, almost like a memory not his own, settled deep inside him. Both warrior and commander were connected now, tied together by an invisible thread neither understood but neither could ignore. The first contact between two worlds had left its mark, on Carl's blade, on Elias's face, and on the destiny of both their peoples. The sun had barely risen over Korkesh when Carl awoke, her mind restless and unsettled. The memories of the day's skirmish played like flickering shadows behind her eyes, but there was something new, something strange stirring within her. A soft pulse, almost like a heartbeat, echoed in her veins, unbidden and mysterious. She rose and moved to her blade, the weapon she had carried through countless battles. As her fingers brushed the metal, she felt a sudden warmth radiate from its surface, pulsing gently like a living thing. It was the same blade that had scratched the human commander's face, the one now stained with his blood. Carl had heard the old legends whispered around campfires, the tale of the Zarmik, an ancient bond formed when blood from two different lives mingled on the sacred edge of a blade. The bond was said to bridge souls, connecting them beyond space, beyond language, beyond war. At first, Carel had dismissed the stories as superstition, but now she wasn't so sure. Across the stars, aboard the human command ship Sentinel, Captain Elias Rourke sat quietly in his private quarters. The scar on his cheek had barely faded, but something deeper was stirring inside him. images and feelings not his own slipping into his thoughts like a strange melody. He saw flashes of towering crystalline spires reaching toward alien skies. He felt the pulse of a heartbeat that wasn't his, the rhythm of a life lived far away in the red dust of Korkesh. At times, he even heard whispers, soft, urgent, calling to him in a language he didn't understand but somehow felt compelled to learn. Elias frowned, leaning forward as if to listen closer. His officers had started to notice his distracted moods. Some called it fatigue. Others suspected more. But Elias knew better. The bond was real. The same mysterious thread that connected him to Karl's blade now linked their fates. Back on Korkesh, Karl sought answers. She approached the village elder, a wise woman whose eyes held centuries of memory. Karl described the strange feelings, the shared visions, the pulse of life that wasn't hers. The elder nodded knowingly. "The Zarmek is rare," she said softly. "It is a gift and a challenge. When blood touches steel between two souls, a bridge is formed, one that can unite or destroy, depending on what the bearers choose." Carol swallowed hard. She had never imagined her enemy could become more than that. Yet the bond tugged at her, urging her toward understanding rather than hatred. On the human ship, Elias struggled with his own dilemma. Could he trust the connection? Could he reach out to Karl, the warrior who had once been his foe? The thought felt dangerous, but also filled with a strange hope. The days that followed were filled with moments of quiet reflection and cautious curiosity. Both Carol and Elias sensed the presence of the other in dreams and thoughts. Neither knew where this path would lead, but neither could turn away. In the silence between worlds, an invisible thread had been woven, binding two souls together, scared but intertwined, heralding a future neither could yet see. The neutral zone between the Thalzun territory and human space was a shimmering stretch of stars and silence, a cosmic buffer meant to prevent misunderstandings from igniting war. It was here that Carol and Elias were scheduled to meet for the first time since their skirmish, an official negotiation intended to ease tensions between their peoples. Carol approached the designated meeting platform aboard the gleaming neutral station, her footsteps steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. She wore her warrior's armor, but today her gaze was softer, tinged with curiosity rather than defiance. Elias was already waiting when she arrived, standing near the observation windows that framed the distant galaxies. His scared face caught the dim light, the mark a silent reminder of their shared past. Neither spoke at first. The weight of the moment filled the air. Then, Elias broke the silence. "Karel," he said carefully, nodding. "It seems we're connected in ways neither of us fully understands." Karel's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. "Our people may share this strange bond, but I'm not sure it means peace." Elias smiled faintly. "Neither am I, but it means something. It means there's more between us than the fight." They moved to a private chamber, away from the prying eyes and ears of diplomats and military officers. The atmosphere was tense but oddly familiar, as if the invisible thread linking them pulsed stronger here. "I've been seeing things," Elias admitted. "Images of your world. The red deserts, the tall spires, even your people. I feel like I'm stepping into a dream." Karel nodded. "I feel it too. Memories that aren't mine. Emotions that don't belong to me. At times, I even hear your voice." A silence fell between them, a fragile understanding taking root. "Why us?" Karel asked finally. "Why this bond?" Elias shrugged. "Maybe because we're both soldiers who know what it means to lose. Maybe because beneath the surface we want something more than conflict." Carol studied him, sensing the honesty in his words. For the first time, she saw not an enemy but a man burdened by the weight of responsibility. Their conversation was interrupted by a call from the station's command. The peace talks were beginning. They rose, returning to their duties, but something had shifted. The bond between them was no longer a mystery to fear. It was a connection to explore. In the days that followed, Karel and Elias found themselves drawn together by that bond. They exchanged messages filled with cautious questions about culture, beliefs, and hopes. Each discovery chipped away at the walls built by years of suspicion. One evening, Elias invited Carl to view Earth through the station's HoloViewer. She watched cities twinkling with lights, people laughing, celebrating, and building their future. It was a world of contrasts to her own, but one she found strangely beautiful. Carol shared stories of her people's traditions, how honor was more than a word, how every scar told a story, and how even enemies could become allies if trust was earned. Their dialogue was not easy. Misunderstandings flared and pride tested their resolve. Yet with each challenge, their bond deepened. Two warriors from distant worlds, once marked by conflict, now stood on the edge of a fragile bridge, one built on empathy, curiosity, and the hope that scars could heal into something stronger. Night fell across Korkesh, the twin moons casting a gentle silver light over the red sands and jagged cliffs. Karel lay beneath the vast alien sky, her eyes closed, but her mind was anything but peaceful. The strange bond she shared with Elias stirred her dreams with unfamiliar images and sensations. She saw Earth, vibrant cities with lights that sparkled like stars, forests that stretched endlessly, and people moving with a purpose that was both foreign and familiar. The sounds of laughter and music drifted through her dreamscape, mingling with the quiet whispers of her own world. At the same time, on the orbiting human ship Sentinel, Elias drifted into sleep, his mind carried away by visions of Korkesh. He felt the coarse texture of red sand beneath his feet, smelled the dry, metallic scent of the canyons, and saw the towering crystalline spires that reached toward the sky. He even heard Carol's voice, a soft, determined sound urging him forward. When they awoke, both warriors felt the lingering echoes of those shared dreams, a connection that seemed to bridge the immense distance between their worlds. Neither fully understood what was happening, but the bond was undeniable. Carol rose from her campfire and made her way to the village elder, hoping to find guidance. The elder listened carefully as Carol described the vivid dreams that mingled her memories with those of a human far away. The bond grows stronger, the elder said quietly. Dreams are the language of the soul, and when two souls are linked by blood and steel, they begin to speak in visions. It is both a blessing and a challenge. Carol nodded thoughtfully. But what does it mean? Are we meant to become allies, or is this a test? The elder smiled gently. That is for you to decide. The bond is a doorway, not a chain. What lies beyond depends on the courage of those who walk through. Meanwhile, Elias met with his own advisors aboard Sentinel. Though skeptical, they recognized the unusual nature of his experience. He proposed a cautious approach, to use the bond as a bridge rather than a weapon. We have a chance here, Elias told them. A chance to understand each other beyond the surface. This could change everything. As days passed, Carl and Elias began to communicate in new ways. Through dreams and shared visions, they exchanged stories, emotions, and hopes. They learned of each other's fears and dreams, of Carl's desire to protect her people and Elias's hope for a future where war was no longer inevitable. One evening, Carol found herself standing before the HoloViewer on the neutral station once again. This time, Elias was beside her, his hand resting lightly on hers. The stars beyond the glass seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the fragile connection growing between them. Neither spoke, but the silence was filled with understanding, a silent promise that they would face the unknown together. Their shared dreams were no longer just visions. They were the first steps toward a new reality. A reality where two worlds, once divided by fear and suspicion, could find harmony through the bond that had scared a face and bound two souls forever. The day Carol stepped onto the human ship Sentinel, the cold metal beneath her feet was a stark contrast to the warm red dust of Korkesh. The air smelled different here, clean and recycled, filled with the faint hum of advanced machinery. Carol's armor, once a symbol of war, now felt heavy with the weight of uncertainty and possibility. Elias watched her carefully, aware of the fragile trust between them. Neither of them was a diplomat, yet they had become unlikely ambassadors, united by a bond no one fully understood. The crew regarded Carl with a mixture of curiosity and caution, but she bore their gazes with quiet strength. Their mission was simple yet profound: to explore each other's worlds and cultures, to build understanding where once there had been only suspicion. Carol's first steps on Earth were tentative. The towering cities, the endless sky, the bustle of humanity. It was a world she had only glimpsed in shared dreams. Here, people moved with a rhythm unlike her own, their lives intertwined with technology and art and endless possibility. Elias guided her through the vibrant streets, explaining customs, traditions, and history. They visited markets where the scents of spices mingled with the chatter of traders, museums filled with stories of humanity's past, and parks where children played beneath ancient trees. Carol was fascinated by the diversity, the variety of languages, foods, and ideas, yet she also saw challenges. The struggle to balance progress with preservation, the tensions that sometimes simmered beneath the surface. Despite the differences, Elias noticed something remarkable. Carl's eyes shone with a growing warmth, not just from the novelty of this new world, but from a deepening respect for its people and their hopes. In turn, Carol shared her own world with Elias. Through holo recordings and vivid storytelling, she revealed the beauty of Korkesh, the towering spires of crystal, the deep traditions of her people, the bonds of honor and loyalty that shaped their lives. They spent hours discussing their hopes for the future, their fears about the past, and the burdens each carried. The bond between them pulsed steadily, a quiet reminder that they were no longer just individuals, but connected souls. As days turned into weeks, the journey was not without its challenges. Misunderstandings flared over simple customs, old prejudices surfaced, and the weight of expectations pressed down on them both. At one point, Carol felt a pang of homesickness so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. Elias noticed immediately, offering quiet support, a hand on her shoulder, a shared smile. "Your world is vast and complex," Carl admitted one evening, looking out at the city lights. "But I see now that our futures can be woven together, if we choose." Elias nodded. "The bond isn't just about blood or battle scars. It's about choice, and I choose to walk this path with you." Together, they stepped forward, two warriors from different worlds united by a shared journey, one that would test their resolve, but also hold the promise of something greater than either had ever imagined. The new alliance between Carol and Elias sparked hope among some, but it also stirred unease in others. Both the Thalzone and human sides had factions that viewed the bond with suspicion, old fears and distrust running deeper than the visible scars or diplomatic gestures. Back on Korkesh, Carol sensed the tension in the air. Some of her own people whispered that trusting a human was dangerous, that the bond was a curse rather than a blessing. Among the humans, rumors swirled that Carol might be using the bond to manipulate Elias, or worse, that the Thalzone sought to gain an advantage. One evening, Carol met with the elder once more. The elder's eyes were grave. "Not all will see the bond as a path to peace," she warned. "Some fear what they do not understand. You must be patient, Carol, and steadfast." Carol nodded, determination hardening in her heart. "I will not let doubt tear what we've begun apart." Meanwhile, aboard the Sentinel, Elias faced his own challenges. His crew, loyal but wary, questioned the wisdom of the alliance. A heated debate erupted in the command room. Could he trust Carol and her people when so much was unknown? Elias listened, weighing their concerns carefully. He knew that trust was fragile and must be earned through actions, not words. To build confidence, Elias invited key leaders from both sides to join a council dedicated to transparency and dialogue. Carol agreed, recognizing that openness was their strongest tool against suspicion. The council's first meeting was tense. Voices rose in frustration as decades of mistrust spilled into the room. Yet, Carol and Elias remained calm, speaking not as warriors, but as partners seeking common ground. At one point, a human delegate accused the Thalzun of secret plans to sabotage human settlements. Carol responded with quiet strength, sharing her people's long history of survival and honor. "Peace is not the absence of conflict," she said, "but the willingness to understand." Slowly, the atmosphere shifted. Questions became discussions. Accusations gave way to curiosity. Both sides realized that despite their differences, their fears were often mirrors of one another. Outside the council chambers, Carl and Elias met in private. "This will not be easy," Carl said, her voice steady but soft. Elias reached out, his scared hand brushing hers. "Nothing worth building ever is." Their bond pulsed between them, a reminder of the power and responsibility they shared. It was a constant challenge to prove that connection was more than a myth or a political tool. As the days passed, Carl and Elias faced subtle attempts to undermine their efforts. Anonymous messages, misleading rumors, and quiet resistance tested their resolve. But they pressed forward, understanding that trust was a journey, not a destination. The scar on Elias's face, once a mark of battle, had become a symbol of connection, of hope, and of the courage it took to face uncertainty together. In the midst of challenges, Carl and Elias held fast, knowing that the future of their worlds depended on their willingness to believe in something greater than fear. Weeks turned into months, and the bond between Carol and Elias grew stronger, evolving from a fragile connection into a source of strength neither had expected. The scar on Elias's face was no longer just a mark of conflict. It was a symbol of unity, a reminder of what they had endured and what they stood for. Their communication deepened beyond words and dreams. Sometimes, in moments of quiet solitude, they could sense each other's emotions as vividly as if they were standing side by side. When one felt doubt or pain, the other felt it too, an invisible tether that neither could ignore. During one such moment, Carol sat atop the highest spire of Korkesh, gazing at the swirling stars above. The wind whispered around her, carrying the scent of distant rain and earth. She closed her eyes, reaching out through the bond to Elias. Far away, aboard the Sentinel, Elias felt the sudden rush of her presence, calm but filled with a quiet urgency. He closed his eyes in response, sending back a wave of reassurance. Their shared connection was becoming a language of its own. But the deepening bond brought new challenges. Emotions once kept carefully guarded now surfaced. Uncertainty, hope, and even something akin to longing. Both warriors found themselves navigating feelings that went beyond duty or alliance. One evening, Carol invited Elias to experience a traditional Thalzun ceremony, held in the sacred caves beneath Korkesh's deserts. It was a ritual of remembrance and renewal, where stories of ancestors were shared and scars, both physical and emotional, were honored as marks of survival and strength. Elias listened as Carol recounted the tales, her voice steady and proud. She spoke of the Zarmek, the bond that could unite or divide, and how her scarred blade was a reminder that even wounds could create connection. As the ceremony ended, Elias placed a hand on Carl's scared cheek, a gesture of respect and solidarity. The warmth of his touch sent a pulse through the bond, affirming their shared journey. Yet, despite their closeness, uncertainty lingered. They both wondered what the future held, not only for themselves but for their people. Could the bond truly bridge two worlds so different? Would their growing connection withstand the pressures of politics, fear, and tradition? Their answers were not immediate. Instead, they chose to face each day together, step by step, scar by scar. In the council chambers, their efforts began to show results. The tentative trust between the Thalzun and humans blossomed into collaborative projects, shared research, cultural exchanges, and joint exploration missions. Carol and Elias became symbols of possibility, living proof that understanding and empathy could transform even the deepest divides. One night, as they stood beneath Korkesh's twin moons, Elias turned to Carl. "Our bond is more than fate," he said softly. "It's a choice, and I choose to keep walking this path with you." Carol smiled, her scar catching the moonlight like a beacon. "So do I." Together, they looked toward the horizon, not as enemies, but as partners bound by something stronger than scars, stronger than blood. They were bound by hope. The day had finally come for Carl and Elias to stand before their people, not as warriors locked in battle, but as ambassadors of a new era. The great hall on Korkesh was filled with representatives from both the Thalzlun and the humans, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope, skepticism, and curiosity. The scar on Elias's face was visible beneath the ceremonial cloak he wore, no longer a mark of pain, but a symbol of the bond that had united two souls and two worlds. Carl's blade, polished and gleaming, was held carefully at her side, a reminder of the moment their lives intertwined. Elias stepped forward first, his voice calm but resolute. "We have come a long way, from enemies to allies, from strangers to something more. This bond between Carl and me is proof that understanding is possible, even when it seems impossible." Carol followed, her eyes sweeping over the crowd. "The scar I bear is a reminder, not of defeat, but of connection, of the strength that comes from choosing to see beyond differences and to embrace what unites us." For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then, slowly, the hall began to fill with applause, tentative at first, then growing stronger, echoing through the vast chamber. Outside, the skies over Korkesh were painted with the glow of celebration. Ships from both worlds soared together in a dance of light, a symbol of hope and partnership. Later, in the quiet of the night, Carl and Elias stood together beneath the twin moons, the bond between them pulsing softly, a living thread that tied their fates forever. Carol touched the scar on Elias's face gently. "Our journey has been marked by scars," she said, "but those scars have bound us." Elias nodded, his hand finding hers. "Not just bound us, but strengthened us. Through every challenge, we chose trust over fear." They stood in silence, knowing that while their bond was a beginning, it was also a promise to their people, to each other, and to the future. "Where do we go from here?" Carl asked softly. Elias smiled. "Forward, together." Their story was no longer just about a scar or a blade, but about two souls who found in each other a reason to hope, a reason to believe that even in the vastness of space, connection could be forged, and that bond could change everything. As dawn broke over Korkesh, the light caught the edges of Carl's blade and the scar on Elias's face, shining like beacons of a new dawn. Bound forever, not by war, but by the choice to understand, to trust, and to walk the path of peace together.